What if I told you that some of the most terrifying occult movies ever made weren't born from a screenwriter's imagination, but from real events that left behind evidence, witnesses, and mysteries that remain unsolved to this day? I'm about to take you deeper into the shadows than most film channels dare to go. While other channels just recap movies and talk about special effects, occult cinema reveals the true stories behind the fiction, the documented cases, the historical events, and the real encounters with the unknown that filmmakers drew from when creating the occult classics you thought were just entertainment. Hit that subscribe button and stay up to date with all my esoteric movie breakdowns. These are 10 real events that directly inspired occult movies, and by the end of this video, you'll understand that the line between reality and horror cinema is far thinner than you ever imagined. Number 1. The Dancing Plague of 1518. In July of 1518, a woman named Frau Trophea began dancing in the streets of Strasbourg, France. Within days, dozens joined her. Within a month, around 400 people were dancing uncontrollably, some for weeks without stopping. Historical records document that some danced until they collapsed from exhaustion, and several died from heart attacks, strokes, or sheer physical breakdown. This wasn't a celebration or festival. Witnesses described the dancers as appearing terrified, unable to stop their bodies from moving. Local authorities tried everything from hiring musicians to play constantly, hoping the dancers would eventually tire out, to building a wooden stage to contain them. Medical historians still debate what caused this mass phenomenon. Some point to ergot poisoning from contaminated grain, which can cause convulsions and hallucinations. Others suggest mass psychogenic illness triggered by extreme stress from famine and disease. But the most disturbing possibility is that something genuinely supernatural seized control of hundreds of people simultaneously. While no film directly adapts the dancing plague as a historical event, the concept of dance as a vehicle for possession and madness pulses through occult cinema. Dario Argento's Suspiria presents a dance academy that's actually a witch coven, where movement becomes ritual and the body is overtaken by forces beyond rational control. The connection becomes even clearer when you understand that medieval accounts of the dancing plague often blamed it on demonic possession or curses from saints. The dancers themselves reportedly begged for exorcisms and pilgrimages to holy sites to break whatever force controlled them. Darren Aronofsky's Black Swan explores similar territory, showing how the pursuit of perfect movement can open doorways to psychological and possibly supernatural transformation. Nina's descent into madness through dance mirrors, the historical accounts of dancers who couldn't stop even when they desperately wanted to. The dancing plague reminds us that the body can become a battleground for forces we don't understand, and that sometimes the most terrifying possession isn't demonic voices or levitation, it's losing control of your own physical form while remaining fully conscious of what's happening. Number 2. The DYATLOV Pass Incident. On February 2nd, 1959, 9 experienced hikers died in Russia's Ural Mountains under circumstances so bizarre that the Soviet investigation concluded only that they were killed by a compelling natural force, a phrase that explained nothing. The facts are undisputed and deeply disturbing. The group's tent was found torn open from the inside, as if they'd desperately cut their way out in a panic. The hikers fled into the freezing wilderness wearing minimal clothing, despite temperatures around negative 30 degrees Celsius. Their bodies were discovered over the following months, scattered across the mountainside. Some had died from hypothermia, but others showed injuries that the medical examiner said were consistent with extreme force: fractured skulls, broken ribs, massive internal trauma, yet with no external wounds. One victim was missing her tongue and eyes. Most disturbing of all, some of the clothing recovered from the bodies showed elevated levels of radiation, and witnesses reported seeing strange orange lights in the sky around the time of the incident. The Soviet government classified the investigation and closed the area to hikers for 3 years. For decades, the case remained a mystery that spawned countless theories. From secret military tests to avalanches to attacks by indigenous peoples, the 2013 film Devil's Pass takes this real-life enigma and spins it into supernatural horror, suggesting that the hikers encountered something from another dimension. While the movie adds fictional elements, it's built on the foundation of genuine mystery that has never been satisfactorily explained. Recent attempts to solve the case have proposed everything from infrasound-induced panic to a rare type of avalanche, but none of these theories account for all the evidence, particularly the radiation, the missing body parts, and the sheer terror that would make experienced mountaineers flee into deadly cold without proper clothing. The DYATLOV Pass incident represents the kind of real-world mystery that's more terrifying than any fictional horror because it actually happened, it's thoroughly documented, and despite decades of investigation, we still don't know what killed those 9 people on that frozen mountain. Number 3. The Beast of Gévaudan. Between 1764 and 1767, a creature terrorized the rural region of Gévaudan in south-central France, killing over 100 people and injuring dozens more. This wasn't folklore or legend, it was a documented crisis that required royal intervention. The attacks were savage and specific. The creature targeted humans rather than livestock, often going for the throat or head. Witnesses described it as wolf-like but larger, with reddish fur, a massive head, and a tail thicker than any normal wolf. Some accounts mentioned a foul smell and eyes that seemed almost intelligent. King Louis XV sent professional wolf hunters, soldiers, and even members of the royal court to kill the beast. Multiple animals were killed and declared to be the creature, yet attacks continued. The body count kept rising. What makes this case particularly disturbing is the sheer number of credible witnesses and the detailed records kept by local authorities. These weren't peasants telling campfire stories. These were documented attacks investigated by government officials. The 2001 film Brotherhood of the Wolf takes this historical event and reimagines it with secret societies, occult conspiracies, and martial arts action. While the movie adds considerable fiction, it's grounded in the very real terror that gripped France for 3 years. Some modern researchers suggest the beast was a large wolf, a hyena escaped from a menagerie, or even a lion. Others point to evidence that it might have been a trained animal used by someone for murder. But the most unsettling possibility is that it was something we still can't identify, a creature that existed in that specific time and place, killed over 100 people, and then vanished. The Beast of Gévaudan reminds us that even in relatively recent history, there are creatures and events that defy easy explanation, and that sometimes the monsters in our movies are based on things that actually hunted and killed human beings. Number 4. The KEDDIE cabin murders. On the night of April 11th, 1981, in a remote resort cabin in Keddie, California, 4 people were brutally murdered in what remains one of America's most disturbing unsolved crimes. Sue Sharp, her son John, his friend Dana, and later Sue's daughter Tina were killed in an attack so savage that investigators struggled to understand the level of violence involved. The crime scene showed evidence of multiple weapons, knives, a hammer, and what appeared to be ritualistic elements in how the bodies were positioned. What makes this case particularly haunting is that 3 other children were sleeping in the cabin during the murders and somehow survived unharmed, later reporting that they slept through the entire attack despite the violence occurring just feet away. The investigation was plagued by incompetence and possible corruption. Evidence was mishandled, suspects weren't properly investigated, and the case went cold for decades. Tina's skull wasn't discovered until 3 years later, miles from the cabin. Director Brian Bertino has stated that the KEDDIE cabin murders were one of the inspirations for The Strangers, his 2008 home invasion horror film. While The Strangers is fictional and doesn't recreate the specific details of KEDDIE, it captures the same sense of random, inexplicable violence in an isolated location. The case was officially reopened in 2013, and in 2016, a suspect was identified through DNA evidence, but he had died in 2000. The full truth of what happened that night and why remains unknown. The KEDDIE cabin murders represent the kind of real evil that's more terrifying than any movie monster. Human violence so extreme and senseless that it defies rational explanation, occurring in a place where people should have been safe. Number 5. The HELLFIRE Club. Between 1746 and 1781, some of England's most powerful men, politicians, aristocrats, and even members of parliament gathered in secret to participate in what they called the HELLFIRE Club, officially known as the Order of the Friars of St. Francis of Wykeham. Founded by Sir Francis Dashwood, the club met in caves beneath West Wykeham Hill and later at Medmenham Abbey. Members dressed in monastic robes and conducted mock religious ceremonies that parodied Catholic rituals while incorporating occult symbolism and sexual activities. Historical records confirm that the club existed and that its membership included some of the most influential figures in British society. What exactly occurred during their meetings remains partially mysterious, as members took vows of secrecy, but accounts describe rituals involving chalices, altars, and invocations that blended religious mockery with genuine occult practices. The club's motto was, "Fais ce que voudras, do what thou wilt," a phrase that would later be adopted by Aleister Crowley as the central tenet of his Thelemic philosophy. Dennis Wheatley researched the HELLFIRE Club extensively when writing his occult novels, and his work directly inspired Hammer Films' 1968 production The Devil Rides Out. While the movie is fictional, it draws from the historical reality of elite secret societies practicing ceremonial magic and occult rituals. Also, Eyes Wide Shut. The Stanley Kubrick film from 1999 explores these similar style group dynamics. The Hellfire Club represents something that makes many people uncomfortable: the idea that those in positions of power and authority might be involved in practices that the general public would find shocking or even evil. It's the historical foundation for countless conspiracy theories about elite occult societies. What makes the Hellfire Club particularly significant is that it wasn't hidden peasant witchcraft or underground devil worship. It was wealthy, educated, powerful men deliberately choosing to engage with occult practices and dark rituals, suggesting that the relationship between power and the occult has deep historical roots. Number 6. Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker. Between 1984 and 1985, Richard Ramirez terrorized Los Angeles and San Francisco, committing at least 13 murders, numerous sexual assaults, and burglaries. But what distinguished Ramirez from other serial killers was his open embrace of Satanism and occult symbolism. Ramirez left pentagrams drawn at crime scenes. He forced victims to swear their love for Satan. During his trial, he showed up with a pentagram drawn on his palm and shouted, "Hail Satan," in the courtroom. This wasn't a defense strategy or an attempt to appear insane. Ramirez genuinely believed he was serving the devil. He told investigators that Satan protected him and that his crimes were acts of worship. He wore AC/DC shirts referencing Night Prowler and was obsessed with the band's imagery, though the band themselves had no connection to his crimes. What makes Ramirez particularly disturbing from an occult perspective is that he represents the intersection of genuine evil and occult belief. Whether or not you believe in Satan, Ramirez believed, and that belief shaped his actions and gave him a framework for justifying horrific violence. The 2016 film The Night Stalker dramatizes Ramirez's crimes, and numerous documentaries have explored his case. His story has become a touchstone for discussions about the relationship between occult beliefs and criminal behavior. Ramirez died in 2013 while on death row, but his case continues to raise uncomfortable questions about the power of belief systems, even dark ones, to shape human behavior and justify acts that would otherwise be unthinkable. Number 7. The Mothman Sightings. Between November 1966 and December 1967, residents of Point Pleasant, West Virginia, reported over 100 sightings of a creature described as a large winged humanoid with glowing red eyes. Witnesses included police officers, businessmen, and ordinary citizens who had no reason to fabricate such stories. The descriptions were remarkably consistent: a creature standing 6 to 7 feet tall, with wings folded against its back, eyes that glowed red in the darkness, and the ability to fly at impossible speeds. Some witnesses reported that their cars malfunctioned when the creature was nearby, and many experienced psychological effects, including nightmares and feelings of dread. The sightings culminated on December 15, 1967, when the Silver Bridge connecting Point Pleasant to Ohio collapsed during rush hour, killing 46 people. Many witnesses claimed to have seen the Mothman on or near the bridge in the days before the disaster. Journalist John Keel investigated the sightings extensively, interviewing witnesses and documenting the phenomenon in his book The Mothman Prophecies. Keel's work went beyond simple cryptozoology. He explored connections to UFO sightings, precognitive dreams, and what he called ultra-terrestrial entities that exist outside our normal understanding of reality. The 2002 film The Mothman Prophecies, starring Richard Gere, is based on Keel's investigation. While the movie takes creative liberties, it's grounded in the documented sightings and the very real tragedy of the bridge collapse. What makes the Mothman case particularly compelling is the sheer number of credible witnesses and the connection to a documented disaster. Whether the creature was a harbinger of doom, a supernatural entity, or a misidentified animal, something was seen by dozens of people in Point Pleasant during that 13-month period. The Mothman represents the kind of phenomenon that exists in the gray area between cryptozoology, the paranormal, and prophecy, a creature that may have been trying to warn humanity about an impending disaster, or that feeds on human tragedy, or that simply exists in a reality parallel to our own. Number 8. The Bell Witch of Tennessee. Between 1817 and 1821, the Bell family of Robertson County, Tennessee, was terrorized by an invisible entity that spoke, moved objects, and physically attacked family members. This wasn't a case that faded into obscurity. It was so well documented and witnessed by so many people that it became one of America's most famous supernatural cases. The phenomenon began with strange knocking sounds and escalated to physical violence. The entity, which came to be called the Bell Witch, could speak in multiple voices, sing hymns, quote scripture, and carry on conversations with visitors. It claimed to be the spirit of a neighbor, Kate Batts, who believed John Bell had cheated her in a land deal. The entity focused its attacks on John Bell and his daughter Betsy. John experienced facial twitching and difficulty swallowing that doctors couldn't explain. Betsy was slapped, pinched, and had her hair pulled by invisible hands, often in front of witnesses. What makes this case extraordinary is the number of credible witnesses. Hundreds of people visited the Bell Farm to experience the phenomenon, including future President Andrew Jackson, who reportedly said, "I'd rather fight the British than deal with the Bell Witch," after his wagon mysteriously stopped and wouldn't move until the entity allowed it. John Bell died in 1820, and the entity claimed responsibility, saying it had poisoned him. A bottle of unknown liquid was found near his body, and when tested on a cat, the animal died immediately. The 2005 film An American Haunting dramatizes the Bell Witch case, though it adds a psychological explanation involving repressed memories of abuse. The real case remains unexplained, with no satisfactory natural explanation for how an invisible entity could speak, move objects, and be witnessed by hundreds of people over a 4-year period. The Bell Witch represents one of the most thoroughly documented cases of supernatural activity in American history, with contemporary accounts, newspaper reports, and testimony from credible witnesses all confirming that something genuinely inexplicable occurred on that Tennessee farm. Number 9. The SMURL Family Haunting. From 1974 to 1989, the SMURL family in West Pittston, Pennsylvania, claimed to experience increasingly violent paranormal activity in their duplex home. What began as strange noises and odors escalated into physical attacks, levitations, and sexual assaults by unseen entities. The family reported that objects moved on their own, toilets flushed repeatedly, radios turned on by themselves, and foul smells appeared without source. As the activity intensified, family members were physically attacked, scratched, pushed, and in the case of Jack SMURL, allegedly raped by a demonic entity. The SMURLs contacted Ed and Lorraine Warren, the famous paranormal investigators who had worked on the Amityville case. The Warrens conducted investigations and attempted exorcisms, documenting what they believed was a genuine case of demonic infestation. The case attracted massive media attention, with the family appearing on television and in newspapers. Skeptics pointed out that the SMURLs had financial troubles and might have been seeking publicity, but the family maintained their story despite the ridicule and harassment they received. The 1991 TV movie The Haunted, starring Sally Kirkland, dramatizes the SMURL case. While made-for-TV movies are often dismissed as sensationalized, this one attempted to present the family's account relatively faithfully. What makes the SMURL case significant is its duration, 15 years of reported activity, and the involvement of the Warrens, who brought their credibility as investigators to the case. Whether you believe the family's account or not, they endured years of public scrutiny and never recanted their story. The SMURL haunting represents the kind of long-term paranormal siege that's more psychologically devastating than a single dramatic event. The slow erosion of safety and sanity that comes from living in a place where you're constantly under attack by forces you can't see or fight. Number 10. The Exorcism of Roland Doe. In 1949, a 14-year-old boy in Maryland, known by the pseudonym Roland Doe, underwent a series of exorcisms that would become the most famous case of demonic possession in American history and the direct inspiration for The Exorcist. The case began after the boy's aunt, who had introduced him to Ouija boards, died. Strange phenomena started occurring: scratching sounds in the walls, objects moving on their own, and the boy's bed shaking violently. Marks appeared on his body, including words scratched into his skin. The boy's Lutheran family consulted their minister, who witnessed the phenomena and recommended they seek help from the Catholic Church, which had formal exorcism protocols. Father William Bowden and several other Jesuits performed multiple exorcism rituals over several months. The priests kept detailed records of what they witnessed: the boy speaking in languages he didn't know, displaying superhuman strength, objects moving without physical contact, and his body contorting in ways that seemed physically impossible. The word Louis appeared scratched on his chest, which the priests interpreted as a message that the exorcism should be completed in St. Louis, where the family had relatives. The final exorcism in St. Louis reportedly ended with a loud sound like a gunshot, and the boy claiming to see St. Michael defeating a demon. After this, the phenomena ceased, and the boy returned to normal life with no memory of the events. William Peter Blatty learned about the case while attending Georgetown University and researched it extensively before writing his novel The Exorcist. While the book and 1973 film changed many details, making the victim a girl, adding the famous head-spinning scene, and dramatizing the exorcism, the core elements came directly from the documented case. The Catholic Church's records of the exorcism remain sealed, but enough information has been released over the years to confirm the basic facts of the case. Whether you interpret the events as genuine demonic possession, mental illness, or elaborate fraud, something happened to that boy that was disturbing enough to require months of intervention by trained priests. The Exorcist changed horror cinema forever, making demonic possession a mainstream concept and influencing countless films that followed. But it all traces back to a real 14-year-old boy in Maryland who experienced something that the Catholic Church deemed serious enough to require one of the most intensive exorcisms in modern history. Now, you understand that the occult movies that have terrified and fascinated audiences for decades aren't just products of creative imagination. They're built on foundations of real events, documented cases, and genuine mysteries that remain unsolved. These 10 events represent different types of encounters with the unknown: mass hysteria, unexplained deaths, cryptid sightings, serial killers with occult beliefs, secret societies, and supernatural phenomena witnessed by credible observers. Each one provided filmmakers with material that was already more disturbing than anything they could invent. What makes these cases particularly powerful is that they're documented. There are records, witnesses, investigations, and evidence that something genuinely strange occurred. Whether you interpret these events through a supernatural lens or seek natural explanations, you can't dismiss them as pure fiction. The filmmakers who drew from these cases understood that the most effective horror comes from tapping into real fears and real mysteries. By grounding their stories in documented events, they created movies that feel more authentic and disturbing because on some level, we know that something like this actually happened. The question isn't whether these events occurred. The historical record confirms that they did. The question is how we interpret them and what they reveal about the boundaries between the known and unknown, the natural and supernatural, the rational and the inexplicable. What other real events do you think inspired occult movies? Have you experienced anything similar to these documented cases? Let me know in the comments. I read every single one, and I'm always looking for new evidence of how reality and horror cinema intersect. And if this video opened your mind to the real stories behind occult movies, then you need to subscribe to Occult Cinema right now. I'm constantly discovering the true events, the documented cases, and the historical mysteries that filmmakers have drawn from to create the movies that haunt our nightmares. Hit that notification bell because the line between fact and fiction is thinner than you think, and sometimes the scariest movies are the ones that are true.